This is Matthew. This is meteorologist Matthew Carter, with your weather forecast for Thursday, January 29th. Uh, so for the conditions for today, we're still looking at that extremely cold weather. This is as of 10 a.m., 10 degrees in DC with winds out of the north. Up in Pennsylvania, um, around the State College area, it looks around 10 degrees as well. Um, Further out to like New York City, also about 10 degrees. Um, Up into Boston, around 10 to around, it's hard to make out the numbers here, but around potentially 20 degrees. Moving further south down to the Richmond area, 24 degrees, and out into the Midwest, temperatures, some areas mostly in the single digits in Illinois, Indiana, St. Louis around 20. Um, Further to our south, um, there looks to be an area of low pressure down by Texas, um, with a cold front through most of the Texas area. Temperatures warmer in southern Texas and colder up in northern Texas. Um, that in some areas this shows a stationary front, but a cold front all through part of the deep south as well, such as Mississippi and Georgia, with an area of low pressure. Um, you can see, some doesn't look like a very strong frontal boundary, but temperatures in the 40s south of the front, in the low to mid 30s north of the front. So sort of a slight temperature gradient there. Um, and with this frontal, and we also have winds um, out of the south through most of like Louisiana, um, Texas, winds coming from the Gulf. Will likely have some moisture um, move into the southern U.S. through the next few days, um, with the winds out of the south, with these winds, uh, you know, out of the south towards the Gulf, getting a Gulf breeze in these areas. Uh, there's the potential for moisture to develop as we'll go through later on, and then eventually move out to sea and up the coast. But also looking at temperatures currently in the immediate area, Dulles at 20 degrees, National Airport at 22 degrees, winds out of the northwest with gusts of 22 knots as well. Temperatures further north, Gaithersburg 21, Frederick 16 degrees, BWI 20 degrees. Uh, Going down further south, areas such as, let's see where to go to, Richmond at 27 degrees, New York at 19, and then into the Midwest, as I mentioned. It's getting a bit warmer. Temperatures often in the teens out there. Some lake effect off of Lake Michigan. So a fairly similar pattern to the last few days. Maybe slightly warmer temperatures, but mostly fairly similar conditions. Uh, Looking at the cloud cover, it's looking like could be, you can see the snow picked up here in satellite imagery with the sort of that stationary white areas. Some Looks like some fairly thin, higher level clouds out in western Pennsylvania. Um, but it looks like mostly clear conditions in our immediate area. A few higher level clouds present to the west, but looks like for today, mostly clear skies. Moving on from that, let's look at temperatures, and I'll look at the GFS because I think the temperatures on some other models aren't picking up very accurately. And this one just seems to be doing a bit of a better job. Temperatures today getting into at least the low to mid 20s before tonight dropping back down to likely um, around 10, potentially, 10 in the city, um, 11, 12, somewhere around that, or in the suburbs, potentially in the single digits, before warming back up again tomorrow, probably into the low 20s, sort of seeing that similar pattern around 10, warming up into the low 20s for the next few days, before temperatures begin to get warmer by Sunday, with more wind due to an area of low pressure off the coast. We'll have gusty winds, much more significant winds, a larger pressure gradient in our area, with temperatures potentially warming into the mid to upper 20s by Saturday, but feeling very frigid with those wind chills. Moving on from Saturday, sorry, from Sunday. That was Sunday, not Saturday. So Sunday was those windy conditions. Moving on from Sunday into Monday, temperatures will continue to warm, potentially above freezing for the first time in a long time by later on Monday afternoon. And we'll continue to see warming temperatures by Tuesday, potentially into the mid to upper 30s. Temperatures cooling down overnight. Um, Tuesday night into the mid to low 20s, and sort of those similar pattern of temperatures cooling into the 20s overnight and warming into the mid to upper 30s most days through next week. So we do see warmer conditions ahead despite the extremely frigid air we've seen recently. And after that warmer conditions, looking on into February though, it gets very cold again, at least for a time. Uh, as we have some cold fronts that pass through our area and temperatures warm down into the teens and 20s through parts of February. So it's still looking like a cold pattern ahead um, for looking at sort of the long range temperature outlook, just on the American model there, which doesn't always pick up on temperatures the best, especially far out. So that's something to consider. But I think for the close range, it's doing a better job than a lot of the other models, which is why I looked at it here. A lot of the other models are bringing in really cold temperatures that just haven't come in and are difficult to trust. I mentioned that area of low pressure previously. We can sort of see that here in the modeling. We have those winds coming off the Gulf. Uh, Precipitation begins to develop within the Gulf of Mexico. Um, with plenty of moisture within that region, with that frontal boundary around that area as well in the deep south. We then see that moisture pushing up off the Gulf and into areas further northeast, as we can see here. Sort of that moisture developing around the Gulf, around Florida, then pushing further northeast with that area of low pressure. Um, Now off into the Atlantic, but some impacts from it in the Carolinas as well as potentially Virginia, but likely not getting to immediately here in the DC area. Potentially some areas of southern Virginia, North Carolina, along the immediate coasts getting impacted. And as I said, likely not impacting here. If you look at amounts, um, not much at all here, but further south, potentially Richmond down into like Williamsburg area, potentially around 1 to 3 inches of snow, and then further south into the um, Carolinas, potentially upwards of 10 inches of snow. We can see on that model. And looking at the European, we sort of see a similar pattern. Some areas upwards of 10 inches of snow in the Carolinas, um, upwards of 4 inches of snow in Richmond, around Williamsburg, potentially 5 inches of snow. Um, but I think this is picking up a little more aggressively than we'll see in, I'd say, mostly central Virginia, around, could pick up a coating, likely an inch, 2 or 3, but nothing more than that. Um, and then sort of moving on from that, looking at sort of precipitation further out. Um, There's a potentially a chance of snow midweek next week, just something to watch out for, but very far out as of now, and there's not much certainty with that yet. And there's a potentially another chance of snow, but this is extremely far out. So there is a couple chances of snow in the long range forecast, but there's nothing, we're very uncertain of that as of now. That's very far out in these model runs. It's just something to look at and consider that the pattern is here, the cold air is here, the um, synoptic conditions are really favorable for potential snow impacts into the future and into potentially February. But given how far out this is, um, conditions could change, and um, the conditions could be favorable, but a slight shift in the track, and you know, we see a lot or we see very little, and we've seen that much of the time this winter, where we have slight shifts in tracks of storms. Um, we get a big snowstorm or we get nothing at all, and the American model has sometimes picked up on big snowstorms that haven't materialized, so that's something to consider. Um, Sort of looking at the European model, and for those long range events, let's see what it picks up on. And for that middle of the week, next week storm, you see it pushes it off the coast and misses us. So as you can see, there isn't consistency within this, and it's very far out, so we really don't know whether there will be a big snow yet or not. It's just sort of something to consider. Um, but one thing to watch out for with that system this weekend, even though we won't get snow in our immediate area, is to watch out for the winds. Looking back here on the American model, you can see that area of low pressure is off the coast, but looking at the surface conditions, you can see it is very windy, 15 to 20-mile-per-hour winds, gusts much higher, as there's an extremely tight pressure gradient in our region. Looking at the 5-day forecast now briefly. So, um, today, continuing to see mostly sunny skies, temperatures likely into potentially the low to mid 20s throughout the day today. Not warming up too much significantly, given um, the continued sort of cold air advection with winds out of the north and northwest, um, and just that Arctic air that remains placed in our region. Um, by tomorrow, Friday, looking at mostly sunny skies, continuing. Uh, Winds out of the northwest at 5 miles per hour and a high of 22 and a low of 11 degrees. I went for tomorrow. For Saturday, given that area of low pressure, that'll potentially be impacting all areas along the coast, as I mentioned, as well as areas further to our south. Cloudy skies likely will remain in place throughout the day. Winds out of the north at 10 miles per hour, high of 22 and a low of 12 degrees. And we'll see a gradual warm up, though, after the day, Saturday. Winds will remain out of the northwest, but just sort of that Arctic air, um, as that sort of extreme cold Arctic air will sort of move out, um, and we'll get at least more somewhat cold to seasonable temperatures for this time of year for early February. Probably slightly below average, but still, but definitely much warmer than this extreme Arctic air. Moving into early next week, by Sunday, we see mostly cloudy skies, given that storm moving off the coast. Winds out of the northwest at 15 miles per hour, gusts likely significantly higher due to that storm, as I previously mentioned. High of 27 and a low of 14, but wind chills much colder due to the winds and the potentially high wind gusts. Monday, mostly sunny skies. Winds out of the northwest at 15 miles per hour, a high of 35 and a low of 19 degrees. And by Tuesday, winds out of the northwest at 10 miles per hour, a high of 38 and a low of 27 degrees. So temperatures gradually warming up, and um, there's likely no major storm to impact us in terms of precipitation over the next immediate future, but the winds are something to watch out for. Thank you so much for watching this video. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate all the support. Thank you.